Welcome back to the Twin Times Podcast, episode 37. Today we have another special guest. Her name is Hannah Diviney. She's an author, disability advocate, and actress. We talk about her work in the disability space.
Grow up advocating for yourself and seeing your parents do it all the time, whether it be to doctors or teachers or nosy people on the street who make assumptions about your capabilities or whether it's because I'm like a wheelchair user and it's very physically and visually obvious. So that was already baked into my daily life. And then as a kid, my parents and grandparents had always sort of instilled in me the value of giving back and how important it was.
Her film Audrey.
It's been a whole journey. We premiered here at the Melbourne International Film Festival, and then we've had a cinema run, and now we're on Netflix. We're available to buy in the UK, and then I think the same deal in the US on April 1st.
And we also talk about her thoughts on disability representation in the film business.
I do. I think in the last couple of years, like I said, it's gotten a lot better. We have great shows like Heartbreak High and Sex Education and just all that kind of stuff. And we're getting, films like Coda, and there's going to be a new film about the American disability rights movement that I think will be a big deal for our community.
Other than that, let's hop into the episode.
Hey guys, sorry.
Hello, Hannah. No, you're all right.
Something new, but it's not working, so I'm just gonna change it.
Yeah, you do you. All good.
No worries. There we go. That's a bit better.
Good.
Yeah.
Is
that all right for you guys?
Yeah, that's brilliant. I was sort of thinking, fuck, where is she?
No, I'm here.
No, cool. Before we start, we just saw on the Today Show that your film's going to be in the Melbourne's Women's International Film Festival. Do you know anything? Yeah. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
To be honest, I don't know too much about the festival itself. Right. I just know that it's being included. I didn't even know that it was being publicized as on the Today Show, so that's news to me. Thanks for the heads up, guys.
Amazing for you. Well done. No, congratulations.
Thank you. But I think it's just because, the process of making this movie has been very much like being a mushroom, like kept in the dark until the very last possible.
Okay, right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
No, well, I'm glad I've broken that news to you. That's great.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Great way to start the pod. So, Hannah, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe a little bit about your disability?
And also, stupid question, because I have met you guys in person, obviously, but which is which? What are we doing? So, I gotta ask because
I'm Charlie. I have the glasses on. Yeah. And okay. I've got no glasses. Yeah.
All right.
We're wearing the same shirt. Yeah, doesn't make
you can't really see that.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. All right. Hence the name Twin Times.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. A little bit about me is that I wear many different hats in the professional space. I am a writer, author, disability advocate, actor, do many different things. And in terms of my disability, the reason I'm an advocate is because I have cerebral palsy, and I decided that during COVID, I decided that if I have the literal privilege of a voice and the literal privilege of articulating myself, I should probably use it, because I could see so many disabled people were potentially being left behind by the pandemic, and also like not taken seriously, when it was very clear to anyone that for some people with disabilities, even with more serious forms of cerebral palsy than what I have, a condition like COVID would be disastrous.
Yeah, it would be. Absolutely. It's definitely been growing, that space, since I reckon COVID or 2020, that's sort of abouts for sure.
Yeah.
And you were one of the leaders to start that, I guess. And in a way, how you were discovered was changing a lyric for Beyonce and Lizzo through I think it was a tweet or something like that.
Yes,
or X,
yeah.
now that it's called that.
Oh no, we're still calling it Twitter. We're still calling it Twitter. We refuse to bow. We refuse.
Yeah, forget Elon.
Forget
Yeah, no,
but,
thank you.
How did that all come about, I guess? Because that's how you sort of came on the
So
scene.
that's how most of the world knows my name, I guess, which is very strange because I never intended it to be that way. So basically, I am a huge music fan, love all kinds of different stuff, and had been seeing on Twitter that day that various members of the disabled community were a little bit upset about this Lizzo lyric that popped up in one of her new songs at the time. Basically, she used the word spaz, which, as we know, is short for spastic and relevant to cerebral palsy. I have spastic diplegic cerebral palsy and experience spasticity in my legs mainly, which, as you guys know, but we'll explain for anyone listening, is like a constant, unending kind of tightness in your muscles that never really goes away, and that you have no control over. It's quite involuntary and can lead to all sorts of other things, lots of pain and stuff like that, chronic fatigue, all those kind of things. And to me, I had been obviously deeply aware that that word was a slur. It had been used not necessarily against me, but I definitely heard it brandished in the playground as like a marker of someone's like lack of intelligence or like lack of control. And even if people didn't know what the word meant necessarily, like even kids knew how to use it, so that they knew that saying that particular word would cause someone to feel hurt or upset or frustrated. And so that didn't really jam with my kind of understanding of who Lizzo is. Prior to that, I had only ever seen her practicing acceptance and this kind of very radical positivity.
Same here.
Love your bodies, all that kind of stuff. Which, so I felt like it was probably a genuine mistake on her part, but it was also something that I wasn't sure how it had kind of got through. In that, like, I thought that was a universally understood term that we don't use anymore. And I couldn't work out how someone in a team hadn't flagged that, hey, that might be a problem. So I wrote a tweet. It took me all of 5 minutes, maybe. And then I went back to doing what I was doing. I think it was like the June long weekend or something like that. And a couple of hours later, I picked up my phone and went, ow, that's hot. Why is my phone hot?
Yeah, right.
And I looked down and was just like, oh my God. There are notifications everywhere. I don't think my phone has ever had this many notifications. What is going on? And it was just that people were retweeting it and sharing it, and some people were adding their own commentary, either positive or negative, onto it, and it just kept going. And I've had stuff do well online before, but not to that scale. And it got to the point where a couple of days in, I was like, okay, this is doing such intense numbers that someone somewhere with a connection to Lizzo is going to see this. Whether it's a member of a team or a member of a family or somebody. And what am I going to do if that happens because I had assumed that she would be upset.
Yeah.
Because most people, when they're called out for something, don't necessarily respond well. They respond.
No, they get aggravated or things of that nature. So
they respond defensively. Like
yes,
we've all seen those celebrity apology videos where it's like they don't mean it, but their PR is making them say it because God damn it, like you know.
No, I get
So
it.
I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have made an enemy out of Lizzo. Like this is not what I wanted to do. And then a couple of days later, I was eating my breakfast just on a regular, like Monday morning, and I got an all caps message from a friend that said, check her Instagram, she's changing the lyric, go, 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 go. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
What?
How good's that?
Yeah, and then she put out this like beautifully articulate written statement that basically said, look, I didn't know, I would never do that. I know what it is to be called names and to have language weaponized against you as a woman of color and as a woman who exists in like a plus size body. So that's fine. I'm just gonna go and re-record it. No trouble. I was like, whoa, that wasn't supposed to happen.
What massive impact to have on such a big artist at the time.
And then to have like, it's interesting, the attention got more after that because she changed it. Like all of a sudden, I had this email in my inbox from a journalist at the New York Times, and I was like, yeah, right. That person's not really working for the New York Times. Like, this is a practical joke. Somebody knows that, like, the New York Times is like my dream as a writer. Like, someone's figured this out. So I'm like Googling the writer's name, being like, haha, this is going to be fake. And then all of a sudden, I'm like Googling his name, and it's like, no, he's an actual genuine writer at the New York Times. And I was like, oh shit, okay. Cool. And then 6 weeks later, I got a tweet. Someone mentioned me on Twitter, which was a rather potentially precarious thing at the time because my notifications had become something of a dumpster fire. I was being trolled across Twitter, Instagram. People had found my email. They'd found like videos of me. They'd found all this stuff. And someone said, hey, so are you going to call out Beyonce now? And they meant it like to get a rise out of me. And I was like, what? What are they talking about? Like, what's happened? And then I go and do some Googling, and I realized that Beyonce's released a song where she used spaz twice in this song. And I'm going, okay, well, that feels a little less accidental in the sense that, like, the Lizzo thing didn't happen in a vacuum. Literally, the whole world was talking about it. Like, I would go on pop culture sites and be like, oh, I am the pop culture. Like, this is very weird.
Yeah.
And to just be like, And I remember going downstairs and being like, Mom, I have to call out Beyonce now, don't I? Like, I don't wanna.
That's brilliant.
It's so scary. Like, if I'm gonna get trolled by Lizzo, it's gonna be so much with Beyonce. Like, oh jeez. Disaster.
Oh God.
And she was like, yeah, no, you have to call her out. And I was like, fine, okay. So I did another tweet, and then I don't know if you guys know Higher Up, the like support worker.
Yes.
So I used to write articles for them, and they asked me to write an article kind of explaining everything. And then The Guardian picked it up, and it became like the #1 story on the Guardian website. And then a couple of days later, I woke up to my phone ringing, and it was a radio host. So I woke up and was like, hello, and was live on air. Didn't know that.
Oh, how did that go?
So, how do you feel about Beyonce changing the lyric? And I'm like, oh, I feel great. And then get off the phone and go, what are they talking about? Like Beyonce changed the lyrics. Like, ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah, so
God.
it's accidental infamy, I think, is how we would describe that.
Yeah, for sure. But it's definitely not the biggest accident because we've been loving your claim to fame because it
Yeah.
led to
Thank you.
speaking at the National Press Club. So
Yeah, well, there's that have all worked well together, and I'm very much someone who, if I want to do something, I'll be very vocal about trying to manifest it. So the interesting thing about the National Press Club was I'd seen my friend Chanel Contos, who is a brilliant consent advocate, do it. And then that night, I'd literally had a dream that instead of her standing up there, it was me.
Oh wow.
And I just posted about the dream and was like, I promise I'm a fun time, guys. Like, I'm a total nerd because I just dreamt about the National Press Club, but I'm a fun time.
Oh God.
And completely forgetting like that I had started to build a profile and that people were taking notice. I then got a message from someone who works with the National Press Club and was like, hey, just want to know like what you would pitch if you did an address. What would you say? And so I wrote like this big long message that was like this and this and this and this, like taking every opportunity I could think of to basically bring up every disabled issue ever that had ever impacted me. And I sent that off, and then I got an email back, and they were like, yep, the press club wants you to talk. And I was like, oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. Okay, cool. I feel like that wasn't supposed to happen. That phrase is like how you would define this whole
journey.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like I watched it live, your speech, and it was absolutely incredible. And I resonated with the message you were speaking about. Do you feel everyone in the room did as well?
Yeah, the room was really receptive and warm. Because I have done a lot of speaking before, but not
To that
on
level?
that scale.
Yeah.
And also, I was very aware that even though politicians weren't in the room, because it was the week it was the week after Parliament had finished for the year.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that was badly timed. That they'd still be getting it sent to them or like memos about it. So I was very aware that I had the attention of people who could actually enact that change, and that could potentially lead to like actual consequences from what I said. So I think that awareness made me more nervous than ever. And of course, like I would have loved to have eyeballed them in the room. Like I had a whole plan for if politicians were there and how I would handle it, especially politicians who think differently about the world than I do. I was aware that like, okay, well, even if we don't necessarily want them to be elected or to be in a position of power, we have to operate from the point of view that if they are, here's how we work with it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Was working in the disability space something that you felt you were called to do, or was it something that you felt you had to do?
I think it just sort of happens in the sense that you obviously grow up advocating for yourself and like seeing your parents do it all the time, whether it be to doctors or teachers or nosy people on the street who make assumptions about your capabilities or whether it's because I'm like a wheelchair user and it's very physically and visually obvious. Like I'm always answering little kids' questions because some of them have never seen a wheelchair before if they see me out and about or whatever it might be, like that kind of stuff. So that was already baked into like my daily life. And then as a kid, my parents and grandparents had always sort of instilled in me the value of giving back and how important it was if you were in a position of privilege to make sure you gave back. So in terms of like fundraising and advocating in that way, I was well across it. I co-founded an event when I was 14 called the Crazy Cozzy Climb, which was about young people with cerebral palsy and their families climb Mount Kosciuszko, because obviously a feat like that, which is achievable but still intensely physical, would kind of shock people in the sense that they wouldn't necessarily believe themselves to be capable of it. And then we got corporate sponsors involved who had no real exposure or experience with disability before, and it changed their perspectives, and it really blew open people's perceptions. So I'd always sort of been doing that stuff, but then when I was a teenager, I actually really didn't want to be a disability advocate. When I was about 15, 16, 17, kind of those really cantankerous years, I rebelled against the idea quite strongly. And I think that was because I couldn't think of anything worse than having my whole life be about disability, because it already felt like my disabled identity was consuming me at that point. It felt like that was all anybody was ever seeing, because it was getting in the way of friendships. It was making school complicated. It was meaning that employment wasn't necessarily as open to me as it was to my friends or peers. It meant that relationships were not even a thought, that kind of thing. So it just felt like this huge kind of black hole, I guess. And I was very much like, my disability doesn't define me. And now that I'm older and I've had some time to sit with it and some time to actually learn from people in the disabled community, which I didn't necessarily have access to at that time, I realized that, of course, my disability defines me, because it fundamentally defines the way I view the world, the things I care about, the things I couldn't care less about, the values I expect people to have, the things that are important to me in relationships, and so on. So of course it defines me, but it's not all of me. And I've realized that there's a very clear key distinction between those two. Kind of the pandemic that made me stop and think, oh wait, we probably need to start using our privilege.
Yeah, absolutely. And you learn to grow and love who you are as you slowly.
And it's still a process.
It's still a process, absolutely. But I can resonate with that. Being at 15, not really wanting to tell people about our disability as well, and not really wanting to share, and advocating for yourself as well. So
you just want it to go under the radar. You want to be treated like a regular kid,
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think anyone wants that, but you do learn to grow and love yourself, because it's a part of who we are.
Yeah, you can't change it.
Yeah. So can I ask you both a question then? With your experience of disability, are you affected equally or?
Equally.
As in, are both of you impacted, or how does that all?
We both live with an intellectual disability. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry. My disability came into play.
That's all right. Sorry, I should have phrased that better. I just meant
no, all good. Yeah. No, we both live with a mild intellectual disability. We were born with it.
Yeah.
And I think when I used to say to my mum, I think I would have been maybe 10 or 11, maybe, I can't remember.
Yeah.
But I used to say, I don't have a disability, because I don't have a physical disability. I look like a normal everyday person out there.
You can pass as perfectly
absolutely
fine.
Absolutely, but there are little things that I do, like what just happened, that can make people go, okay, there's not something quite right there. What's that?
That could be excused to be anybody, really. That could have.
But now I used to not share my disability openly like that. Whether nowadays I just did say, oh, that's my disability coming into play. That's little things that will happen to me.
Yeah.
So I'm a lot more open than I was 10 years ago.
Yeah. So. And do you go is it just the two of you, or do you guys have any other?
No, it's just us two. Yeah, Mum and Dad said no.
They were like, "Whoa, no, we're not doing that again."
That's right. That's right. I think my mum wanted maybe a girl, maybe a
Uh-huh.
couple of years into when we were born, but Dad said, "Yeah, nah,
Not happening.
Yeah, and did you like? How did you guys find? Sorry, this has turned into a conversation between both of us
No,
now.
no,
That's all
I
right.
love a discussion. Let's
We
do
like
it.
this.
But how did you guys find school? Like, was that difficult or?
It was difficult in certain areas and certain subjects. Yeah, especially because we went to a public primary school,
Yep,
so we
so
didn't
did
get
I.
a lot of support in
Yeah.
our classroom. Um, we got a lot more support in private school
When we went to
when
high
we get
school.
to high school.
Oh, right. Okay.
So
See, I got
yeah,
more support because of the like overt physical nature of
Mm,
my disability. So I have a lot of um things that I can't physically do on my own, like self-care
yeah.
related stuff. So there needed to be someone around for that. So that kind of meant that I was always supported. But yeah, in terms of classes, I mainly did those on my own, except for maths, I
Yeah.
think,
yeah,
because I,
Maths was
yeah,
a big struggle for us. Still sort of is, but
me too.
yeah, yeah, we get through.
yeah,
But like you focus on your strengths. Like we're really both really good at English
yeah,
and
Yeah,
creativity, even communication. Hence
like
why
this.
we talk,
Yeah,
do the
do
podcast.
a podcast.
yeah,
Yeah. So, you focus more on your strengths as much as you can. You want to improve your weaknesses, obviously, to an extent,
Yeah, but
but I think focusing on your strengths is
there's
a
a
lot
certain
better.
level of like,
absolutely.
oh well, like, yeah, because
That's right.
I think like obviously I'm always gonna be focused on keeping my body moving and keeping myself
Mm,
as strong as I can because it makes my life easier, it makes it less painful, it makes it just more fun and eat like better to be me. But I'm obviously not gonna be winning a 100-meter sprint anytime soon. So
Yeah,
like
no,
that's
that's right.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Whether running for us was something we were really good at.
Sometimes I wish I was really good at it because I think it
Yeah.
would help like purely from a mental health standpoint. I think being able to
Mm.
just move until your brain stops thinking would
Yeah.
kind of be helpful.
I reckon we'll chat about your film. Congratulations, by the
yeah.
way, on the Melbourne
Audrey.
International Women's Film Festival.
Yeah,
That's a big
Thank you.
thing, I guess. I know you only just found out about it, but yeah, well done.
Yeah,
yeah,
no, it's the journey of Audrey has been really interesting. Like obviously you guys saw it at the Driving for Change Summit, which
Yeah.
was an incredible kind of gathering of really innovative, clever disabled minds. But yeah, Audrey's been living in various forms, I guess, since we finished filming it in
Mm.
3.
Yeah.
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 So yeah, we finished filming it in March 2023. So two years ago, kind of right now, which is
Wow.
actually I think my last day might have even been today, 2 years ago,
Wow.
Wow.
which is
Wow.
mental.
Wow. Who would have thought 2 years later you'd be on a podcast talking? Well,
Yeah,
you've been on
talking to
several
you
today,
two, my
but
God.
yeah, I know. Yeah, that's
So
amazing. Wow, I love that.
and then the first time we saw the film was South by Southwest in
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Austin,
cool.
Texas, which was really cool. But as you guys know, the film isn't shy about a lot of things.
Mm,
Touches on some pretty intense
mm.
themes and makes fun of a lot of stuff that wouldn't normally be considered kind of taboo, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It was
Um,
quite when we saw it for the first time, it was quite jarring.
yeah, yeah. It was
yes,
Hilarious.
yeah, hilarious.
But
but jarring.
very like, oh my God.
Yeah,
Because no one would ever do this
yeah,
in real life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the experience of watching it in Texas, where it's kind of a more
Yeah.
conservative audience, and like we've been told you're about to enter one of the most like conservative places in the world. So like shush.
Mm.
If anyone asks you a question about, reproductive rights or politics or whatever, you don't have an answer. You are not saying anything. And we were like, oh my God, because obviously there can be quite stark differences between American and Australian humor. But the sense of relief that I got when the American audience started laughing, it was like, oh, thank goodness. Okay. We're not going to be marched out of town and have tomatoes.
Yeah.
Now. Good.
Texas actually has a sense of humor.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it does.
Yeah,
and then it's just been a whole journey. We premiered here at the Melbourne International Film Festival, and then we've had a cinema run, and now we're on Netflix.
Yeah,
we're available to buy in the UK from today, I think.
Okay, like DVD or
like you know how
before
things go on streaming services, you can buy it on like Google Play or
right, gotcha.
Yeah. And then I think the same deal in the US on April 1st.
Yeah, wow, okay, cool.
Feels kind of
It was
funny.
definitely taking legs, that's for sure.
How was the film offered to you? Did you have to audition for it? What was the process?
So it was a really unique situation because I didn't actually have to audition, which normally only happens if you're a big name actor. But basically, I'd just done a show you guys might have seen called Latecomers.
I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, which you can watch on SBS On Demand.
Yes, all right, I'll go do that.
Yeah, brace yourself. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay, right. Okay.
But you'll probably love it. But I think so I just done that, and there was a lot of press because I was, as far as we know, the first person with a disability in Australia to do a sex scene on television in that show.
Yeah, right.
I beat my co-star Angus by 2 episodes.
I love that.
He then gets to have a go. But there was a lot of press around that, and because a kind of rom-com with disabled leads and just all of this kind of groundbreaking stuff through Australian television. And unbeknownst to me, these guys, like the Audrey production team, had been looking for someone to fill the role of Nora for a long time and hadn't really been able to find someone who fully fit the brief. Because if you remember from watching the film, Nora is quite dry. She's quite sarcastic. She has to do a lot of interesting things and a lot of like physical comedy, which isn't necessarily expected of people with physical disabilities. And it was, these guys had heard about Latecomers, so they got access to an early episode, and then they watched some of my press talking about all the ground that I was breaking, and they decided that they really liked kind of how dry and sarcastic I was in real life, that I'd be perfect for Nora. So they emailed me and offered me the role straight up, which was really cool.
Yeah, right. What was how long did it take from shooting the film to the end of production? How long was that process?
We had 6 weeks of shooting on the Gold Coast.
Yeah, roughly. Cool.
Like 5 days a week, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it was 5 weeks because we had 1 week of rehearsal. But it was also a really interesting time because it was the first time that I'd moved away from home. And it was the first time that I was primarily relying on support workers. And not having my family involved at all. Like they were back here in Sydney.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So were your
that kind of leads into the next questions. Were your access needs up to your standard on this project?
Yeah. I think
and
access needs are interesting because, as you guys know, there's like so much that we think is obvious, that we understand, but that the average person, if they've never had to look or think about it before, might miss. And so I think because of the lack of representation and the lack of visibility for disabled actors, there was still a lot for a production to learn off of my experience. If I could do things over, I would probably do them slightly differently in terms of access. But given the constraints of what we had, the particular comedy that needed to be in the film, and the way things were, I think everyone did a brilliant job.
Yeah. Was this the first time that... Sorry.
No, and I was going to say I've done a job since with, which was my first one, with an access coordinator.
Okay, yeah.
If you guys are familiar with what intimacy coordinators do in terms of they help choreograph like intimate scenes and make sure everyone's safe and prioritize consent. So basically, an access coordinator is like that, but for someone's access needs. So they take control of it so that you as the actor can just show up to work like everyone else.
Cool.
And that's a program that has been launched since Audrey, not because of it, but it just kind of worked out timing wise. So I've now had an experience using that on set, and I'm very happy that that's becoming common practice here in Australia and around the world.
Yeah. Well, was Audrey the first film to use support workers?
I think Audrey was the first
or access
film.
needs,
Or access needs
probably
sort of people.
Yeah.
It was the first film to get funding for access needs. So it's the first film to use Job Access, which is a fund that helps kind of equalize and enable the employment of disabled people here in Australia. Hopefully it won't be the last. There were a few kind of logistical hoops to be worked around, because I think Job Access has been typically set up for like more standard jobs where it's like you're going to an office or you're in the one place for multiple months at a time, whereas the basic length of a film shoot is 6 weeks. That's kind of not long enough in typical job standards. But thanks to their kind of ingenuity and creativity, we got there in the end, and hopefully it means more people in the industry can access that as well.
Absolutely. What was it like working with the cast on this film?
Jeremy Lindsay Taylor.
That's right. He's a big name in Australia. So
he is. He is the loveliest human, and working with the cast was incredible. I think everyone was very well cast, so everyone fit their roles really well, and it was a real masterclass for me in terms of just watching and learning and seeing how different people approach acting, because I don't have any formal training as an actor, so all of my learning has been done on set in real time. And Jeremy and Josie, who played Audrey, were both more of a method actor. Which is something I had obviously heard a lot about, because you do, but I'd never seen it in practice, and it also kind of reinforced for me like the benefits, but also the fact that method acting is probably not the approach I want to take.
Fair enough.
That for me, I'm always going to be approaching it from a writing point of view, which is kind of how I always access story, and that was more similar to Jackie Van Beek, who plays Ronnie, who is also a writer and director.
No, that's great.
Loads.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, absolutely love that.
Yeah,
it's brilliant.
Was there any banter on the set?
Oh, there was absolutely banter. How else were we supposed to get through some of those scenes? My goodness.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Relationships and banter, and then have to play it dysfunctionally.
Yeah, right.
Because obviously our family in the film is not one that really gets along or fits together, and in any sort of way, but obviously in order to get comfortable enough to do that, we had to sort of fit together and get along. So it was a bit of a mind bender in that way.
Yeah. No. I'm assuming then it was a very inclusive environment.
Yeah.
Even amongst cast and crew.
I think for most of the crew, it was the first time they'd worked with, or even potentially some of them been exposed to disability. There had to be a big conversation about not leaving camera equipment on the floor because
right.
I have to be able to wheel from point A to point B.
To point B.
And if the cameras are in the way, well, they're going to get hit or damaged, and obviously that's very expensive. So everyone kind of to come up with, okay, places we can put that stuff that's not in Hannah's way, that's still accessible to us. But it was all just about communication and letting people know. And again, it was things that people hadn't thought of. And then once you pointed them out, they were like, oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So it's just being open to the fact that people are always going to be learning and that people don't know what they don't know. So you can't come at them too hard, I guess.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's all about communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What was it like showing the film at the Driving Change Summit events in Sydney?
Fun. Because I think, again, representation of people with disabilities has improved significantly in the last couple of years, but it's still fairly lacking across the board. Like the Attitude Foundation reported that like 3.1% of characters on television and film last year were disabled, compared with like 20% of the actual population here in Australia. Which is obviously a huge gap. So I was very aware that for some people this might be the first time they'd seen someone who looked like them on screen, who did actually have lived experience of disability and wasn't just wearing their life like a costume. But I was also very aware that it wasn't going to be everybody's cup of tea because it's quite a polarizing film. So I'm hoping to kind of keep creating disabled representation that pushes the boundaries, but that is also like suitable to show kids and
for sure
as well.
Yeah, for sure. That leads into our next segment. By the way, how are we going for time? I know you've got a doctor's appointment some
I think
stage.
we're doing okay. Yeah, it's just a telehealth appointment, but I just wasn't sure because I'm like, you could call at any time, but it's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No worries. Do you believe disability representation is growing within the film business?
I do. I think in the last couple of years, like I said, it's gotten a lot better. We have great shows like Heartbreak High and Sex Education and just all that kind of stuff. And we're getting, films like Coda, and there's going to be a new film about the American disability rights movement that I think will be a big deal for our community.
Yeah. When's that coming out? Do you know?
I'm not sure when it's coming out. I've just seen a bunch of like, if you're disabled and you want to act, try getting cast in this. So I don't know what the timeline is. Okay. But
well, that'd be good. That'd be good to watch. Hopefully it's on like hopefully we get a cinema release for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually how that will come out. But I think something that I'm really aware of, like I said, is obviously representation at the childhood level, which is why I've campaigned for a disabled Disney princess for so long. But given the way that Disney has been responding to certain things, and given the news that like under the Trump administration, they've scaled back their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, I'm not holding my breath. I think, like I said, I've been campaigning for a number of years and got a response from them that was basically like, we understand our responsibility and we see you, and we're gonna do that. But in the same breath, they're also a company who who has greenlit like live action remakes of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, but made the dwarves CGI because they couldn't figure out how to do it respectfully for the community. Or it looks like they might be greenlighting a live action remake of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is obviously a deeply problematic story and obviously has its place in time, but I don't think it needs to be remade for 2025. I obviously, as much as I would love the Disney seal of approval and like the impact and reach that would have, especially from a disabled Disney princess, because they're like the characters aside from Mickey and Minnie Mouse that pretty much get on the lunchboxes and the bedspreads and the toys and the books and all the kids dressing up like them for Halloween and all that sort of thing, or birthday parties or whatever. The need for childhood representation is greater than that of the company. So I guess my goal now that I'm in the industry and that I actually have some understanding of how it works, I'm still learning loads, obviously, is to figure out how to do it independently. And create the story anyway.
That's right. I don't know if you agree with this, but I feel like Trump's only been in office a few months and he's thrown a spanner in the works in about every category he can. So it's been a bit of a shit show.
And I think, unfortunately, like the reality for people of any marginalized position, but particularly disabled people in America, especially because we can cross over with any other and every other marginalized group as well, is quite dire. And I'm very conscious of what that might look like, not just for them and for my friends or for people I know, but globally, what that kind of backward step looks like. Not to get all political, but
no, that's all right. I just thought I'd bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you believe we need to see more people with disabilities in high positions of power, whether that be in film business,
yes.
politics?
Yeah. And I think somewhere I would really love to see it, if we bring it kind of back home for a minute, is I think the minister for the NDIS needs to be a disabled person. Because I cannot.
Who is it currently now? It's Amanda Rishworth, isn't it? Or is it still Bill Shorten?
I think so. We'll have to fact check that, but I think it's Amanda Rishworth.
I can fact check now. You'll answer the question.
And I think
it's Bill Shorten, or is he retired? He's retired.
No, I think he's retired now. But obviously we only have one visibly disabled senator in Parliament, and that's Jordan Still-Johns. And as a member of the Greens Party, they're unlikely to give him such a high.
Yeah, she is the minister for the NDIS. Yes, she is. Okay, she is.
Position. So but yes, I do believe that if you want the NDIS to actually function properly as it was intended and serve rather than, I guess, hinder or disrupt the lives of disabled people and make them more complicated or more fragile, then you need someone who understands what it is.
Yeah, for sure.
To live a disabled life.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I think it would run a lot more smoothly if you did have someone that had a disability running the NDIS, whether that be
someone who
a physical
knows
one or intellectual.
Kind of even the things that that actually there's things innately that you can't necessarily teach. We can try and educate able-bodied people as much as we can about the disabled experience, and I spend so much of my life doing that, and so do you guys, and that's why we have this content as much as anything. I mean, clearly you guys have made this podcast not just for yourselves, but in the hopes that people will listen to it and learn something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just think, we need to get to that point. I'm not really sure what that looks like, or how that works, but I'm very conscious that disabled people need to be represented in every room where there's power present, money exchanged, decisions being made. I think it's interesting because when we talk about the employment of disabled people, we know that statistically it's much, much lower, and that there are massive barriers to disabled employment. And I feel like it's almost been this unilateral decision that if we can get disabled people into entry-level positions, then we've done our job. Because we've got disabled people in our company. And I'm like, that doesn't really work. Like, yes, have disabled people in entry-level positions, but also have them in the boardroom. You have to have yeah. So I think there's a lot to be done about power structures and the distribution of power and how we identify that.
Yeah. We've both experienced that on our level, being chucked into an entry-level job and then not being progressed further within that field, whatever it be. So yeah, it's something that I'd like to see change.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
Do you believe that the film Audrey has created a better understanding of what disability representation looks like, besides all the craziness that Audrey
well, I
showed?
think it's really interesting because it's quite subversive in the sense that typically when we see disabled representation on screen, it's quite sad or tragic, or the character is an object of pity or an object of inspiration for the able-bodied people to around them to like get their lives and their shit together. But in this way, that's not Nora's purpose in Audrey at all. And I think it's really interesting as well to make her the forgotten child because, again, stereotypically in family dynamics, it's more than likely that a disabled child is going to get some greater measure of attention purely out of necessity because you got to like take them to appointments or like do like therapy or speech or OT or physio or whatever it is. So I think Nora is quite different to that in that she really has to fight to be seen in a different way than what people would normally expect. And also I think because while she still does some pretty intense things and makes some questionable choices, she is somewhat the quote unquote normal one in her family.
Yeah, for sure.
So
it's also in a way good for the generation of maybe 13 to 18-year-olds or even kids, younger kids, to see someone in a wheelchair with a disability or any type of disability, because I didn't see that growing up, or the only time I did see it was Paralympics.
Safety ads.
Yeah, road safety ads, that's another one. Or Dylan Alcott hitting a tennis ball around. You know, that's where you saw that type of stuff.
But
it is it is great. But seeing that
it's
more
limited.
But hoping to see that more representation happen nowadays.
Hopefully Audrey's the kind of film that makes people who make things, like your casting directors, your directors, producers, other actors, look at projects and go, okay, so we can include a disabled character that doesn't have to be the defining part of their like narrative or character arc. It doesn't have to be everything they are, but we can just include it and tell an interesting story, and they can happen to be disabled as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Do you feel that there is a movement growing amongst the disability community in terms of wanting to be treated equally, not only in the film business, but in every workplace?
I think that movement has been going on for long before us.
Yeah.
It probably is getting more recognition now because of social media, and it's more easily visible in the sense that like, all you have to do to see it is put something into Google or follow someone on Instagram or do all of that. So I think a lot about all of the people who fought to get to where we are now, who will never get the recognition they deserve, and who also aren't necessarily known by members of our community, because I don't know about the two of you, but my knowledge of disabled history is unfortunately very limited.
Yeah.
Because I was never taught it, never exposed to it. And while I'm under no illusions that like all of the problems we face are going to be fixed in our lifetimes, or that I'm necessarily going to be like at the most inclusive and accessible place I can be by the time it's not my turn anymore, I'm very conscious that like making this change isn't just about me. It's about everyone who will come after me, and it's about having the ability to understand that just because you might not get to sit under a tree and enjoy its shade doesn't mean you shouldn't plant the seeds.
Absolutely. The good thing about social media, or bringing it back to that, promoting disability representation, is that I think a couple of weeks ago, when the Oscars were on, you posted a post on your story of a disabled artist. I don't know who it was, but they were in a wheelchair.
Marissa Bodie. She
That's
played
it.
Nessa Rose in Wicked.
Yes. And I thought, well, that's absolutely brilliant that came up through social media. I love seeing it, but I would have loved to have seen that come through Channel 7 or Channel 9 on the news. I don't know if you saw that through mainstream. Yeah.
But we're getting there. And I think the great thing about social media too is it's accessible for a lot of disabled people in ways that physical spaces aren't. Obviously, there's still a number of accessibility issues with social media, but it's far more equitable in that way. And also, you can be followed by anybody anywhere in the world, which is both really cool and obviously not so. But if you focus on the really cool aspect of it, you're getting your story out there, and you're teaching people with every photo you post, with every comment you make.
Yeah, no, it is. It's brilliant. Hannah, you've been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you guys for having me. I've really enjoyed this chat.
Yeah, it's been good. Thank you for coming on. We've got one last question. What advice would you give to that younger Hannah who's struggling in school or about to embark on her journey in the advocacy world? What would you say to that person?
I would remind her to breathe. I think that's important. I would tell her that she cannot possibly imagine what's coming next, and that it is going to be both the most brilliant and the most chaotic thing she'll ever experience, and that her impact will be felt by people all around the world. There will be she will be making a difference, and it'll be hard and it'll be scary, and there'll be parts of it that don't feel comfortable, or parts of it that feel weirdly vulnerable, or things that she wants that she doesn't get, rejection she faces. But overall, I built this incredible kind of platform in life, and I'm really lucky, and I think her head would explode.
Well, she'd be very proud.
I hope
That's
so.
for sure.
I hope so.
No, she would be, for sure. Thank you for coming on, Hannah. It's been a privilege.
Thanks for having me, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care. What a great chat with Hannah. She's very funny, witty, and just a great person to chat to. And she was great to have the insights on disability representation, her film, and her work in the disability space. It was absolutely brilliant. If you want to learn more about Hannah, a link to all her socials will be in the description below, and to her website as well. And also her film Audrey. It's now out on Netflix, so go give it a watch, and we'll link it in the description below. If you want to learn more about Twin Times, a link to Charlie and I's socials will be in the description below. And that's about it. This has been the Twin Times podcast. We wish you nothing but peace and love throughout the rest of the week. If you are on Spotify, please give us a rating out of 5 stars and a follow. And if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Other than that, we'll see you in the next one.